Good morning, evening, or afternoon, whenever it is you happen to find this. I am J-Ro, the Unsummoned Skull, your consummate host of the Quote of Arms podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about people's favorite tribes and what makes them special, how they work, how they win, and what personal meaning they have to us. Because as we come together, we all become stronger. That's what Coat of Arms does in Magic. So I'm welcoming today the Game Grounds. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Name is Ronald Sethman. I'm the host at the Game Grounds. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I stream a variety of content from Magic the Gathering to God of War.
Interesting. I look forward to catching up on some of that sometime. So to start things off, what tribe is it that you brought today?
So the tribe I brought with me today is Spirits. It's a tribe that I've had. This is honestly the first tribe I ever got into Magic with.
Awesome. So when you say spirits, there have been spirits in different places meaning different things. I believe Innistrad has spirits being kind of like ghosts. Kamigawa has spirits kind of like the ancestors. So is there a particular grouping of spirits that you're referring to, or is it spirits in general?
So this one honestly is more so focused almost entirely on the Innistrad spirits, um, because that was just what I was building at the time, and what my friend, we'll get into more of this, what my friend kind of built for me.
Mm-hmm.
But
So,
it's more so.
okay.
I'm looking at the cards here, and we have original Innistrad, the second Innistrad I can never remember, and the third. All three sets are here, and then we got some Gate Crash stuff as well. So this deck is essentially just original Ravnica and original Innistrad is what this deck is for the most part.
Interesting. So, was there a particular aesthetic for those spirits that you were looking for?
So for these ones, it was blue, white, black, and the aesthetic that I was just looking for was tokens, was big, wide or small, wide flyers that I could buff and recur. So just generate a lot of value with these for no mana or very little mana, and then protect them and make them huge. With what my key card is Drog Skull Captain.
Mm-hmm. So, Drogskol Captain does what?
All right, Drug Skull Captain is a flying 2/2 for 1 white and blue. It says other spirits you control get +1/+1 and have hexproof. So if I get two of them down, they protect each other as well, which is really nice.
How would you get two of them down?
Well, it's not legendary, so I can just cast one and then hopefully on the next turn, or generally what I would do is I'd wait till I had 6 mana and slam both down onto the field, and then. Oh, sorry, this is not an EDH deck. This is a
Okay.
modern deck. Did I
Okay.
mention that?
Okay. That would be a good thing to mention because usually the focus on this will be commander decks, but one thing you could do if you were going to make this into a commander deck is you could clone it.
Yep, I could definitely clone it, and that's honestly one of the things that I want to do. A friend of mine, so right now, the only reason this isn't an EDH deck is because I don't have a commander that's right for it yet. I've been looking every blue, white, black commander that comes out. I'm reviewing it. I've looked through all of them, and every time there's a new one, I'm like, maybe this one, maybe this one.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't want to build the deck just because it's in the colors.
Mm-hmm.
I want to build it because it fits, right?
Yep.
And so I'm waiting for that moment when this deck can finally become EDH. I'm waiting. Oh, I'm salivating for that day.
It's interesting that you're mentioning Esper spirits. My experience in Modern, I've seen Blue White and I've seen Bant with
Mm-hmm.
Collected Company. So, what is it about Black that, or what does Black add to it?
Well, honestly, there's not too much because this isn't a super competitive list. But the two things that Black adds to this is I get to cast Beckon Apparition and Lingering Souls for its flashback cost.
Mm-hmm.
So Beckon Apparition is a instant for either hybrid white or black, and it's an instant speed, exile target creature card from a graveyard, and then I get to put a 1/1 white and black spirit creature onto the battlefield.
Mm-hmm.
Then Lingering Souls is a sorcery, 3-drop, put 2 spirits onto the battlefield with white and flying, or flashback 1 and a black, put 2 spirits onto the battlefield. So getting to
Hmm.
be able to use both of those is why we splash black into this deck and make it Esper rather than just simply blue white.
Well, back in Apparition could be played in blue white as well, but I think in Esper it allows you to use a blue source that also produces black, which is probably helpful,
Yes.
especially when you're talking about being able to fetch. I'm assuming you have fetches in the deck.
Like I said, this isn't very competitive. I don't. I don't have
Oh,
a single fetch in this deck. This is the first
interesting.
deck that I ever made, and it has not been updated. And
Okay.
I kind of refuse to update it.
Okay. The reason why I was assuming that incorrectly, of course, is because then you would be able to find a blue and black source, and you could
Hmm.
have a little bit more flexibility with what you want to cast when.
Yep.
But that does not matter. So, so these are mostly Innistrad era with some from the various Innistrads. So,
Hmm.
what do the creatures look like? Since this is an auditory type of a display, people aren't necessarily going to have the cards in front of them to look at. So,
Right.
what do these Innistrad spirits look like?
So the best way I would describe them is they're the stereotypical white hue kind of hollow looking spirits that you can see through. There are three main distinctions of there's the kind that are just they look like a cloud of smoke. There's midnight haunting, which is two and a white and instant speed that you get to put two spirits onto the battlefield. And the spirits on there just look like wispy clouds of smoke that just kind of lingering can go are intangible creatures. Then you have spectral procession, which is another really big one. Hybrid 2 mana or 1 white, and it's for three of those pips. And then there can put three 1/1 white spirit creatures. Those are again very wispy, very spectral, but they kind of have like these skull faces that show that they're dead. And then lingering souls even shows the spirit coming out of a body. Um, and so they're very much so tied to the bodies that they come from, definitely tied to being spirits of the freshly living or those who have a story to tell. There's a tie to the physical realm with these spirits, and it's really cool to look at them and see that story played out in some of these cards and some of the art of these cards. But yeah, generally the artistic view of these is just very smoky, wispy style spirits.
Interesting. Do they kind of look like ghosts?
Yes, very much so. They look like ghosts.
Awesome. Do you have any particular tokens that you use with them?
I've actually, so the tokens I have accumulated over the years, but my favorite one is, so there are two that kind of lean towards my favorite. One is the M15 Spirit token, which is this purple warrior that is a ghost. He looks like a ghost, but he's the hue is purple, and I like this one because he has a broken sword, and I think that just tells a lot of his story. And he's clad in armor, and so I really enjoy that. My other favorite one, which apparently do not have in front of me, was I believe from I got to remember it now, but I believe it was from Conspiracy, and it was again I loved it because of the story it told. It's a spirit that is trapped behind bars, so it looks like it's
Hmm.
reaching out through the cage that it was trapped in life and about to come out. And I just again love the spirits that tell stories. So I love the M15 because I can see the story of that character, and then I loved the Conspiracy token because once again you see the story behind that character as well.
Awesome. What would you say the identity of the spirits are that are in the deck? Like, how do they work?
Well, in this case, generally the spirits work from, you mean mechanic wise or just lore wise?
Um, we'll go mechanic first, and then we'll go to lore after.
Okay. So mechanically, they kind of work from just you get cheap 1/1 flyers for a low amount of mana. So my mana curve tops out at 3. It does not go above that. The most expensive cards I have in here are Twilight Drover, Drug Skull Captain, Midnight Haunting, and Spectral Procession, all at 3 mana.
So it is worth noting that Spectral Procession can be cast for 3, but it has a mana value of 6, if I recall correctly.
True. Yes, it does. Technically, yeah, it does. You're right. It has a mana value of 6 because 2 or a white.
Hmm. So that is important with getting around certain things, including like Trinisphere.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms, because of the alternative way to cast it and such, and it doesn't get ticked down. If somebody happens to put a chalice for 3 out, it doesn't get stopped.
Right.
Um, Also, if let's see if it ever comes back, the counter top is illegal, but counterbalance is still legal. So if somebody ever tries to make a modern miracles deck,
Yeah. Yeah. At this point, anything that shuts off 3 mana would basically shut off this entire
hmm
deck.
but it's always good to know what your outs are.
Yep.
So
As far as
they're about making cheap flyers.
mhm.
And why is it important to make cheap flyers?
So the importance, I mean, obviously, from a mechanic standpoint, cheap flyers are evasive. They're hard to block. You can hit face with them very easily. But the reason why it's important for me to make cheap flyers is because of what this deck started out as and how it became what it is. And that's kind of the heart behind this deck. So when I was in college, I refused to play Magic. Had several friends that loved the game, and I watched the amount of money that they would sink into it. I had one
Hmm.
friend who, I mean, I'm sad that he's out of it because he was the type of person who made a living out of trading and selling magic cards, and he could watch the market. He knew the market so well. It was
Interesting.
fascinating to watch, but I also knew the money he had to invest in that. And I said,
Hmm.
you know what, that's not for me. I'm not going to do it. And my best friend at the time, still one of my best friends now, we call him Bagel,
Okay.
which is short for Bagel Bites.
Ah.
It's just one of his favorite foods.
Hmm.
And he looks at me and he goes, you know what, Ron? Here's a deck. It's blue white flyers. I'm going to give you this deck. I will give you this deck.
Neat.
You don't have to spend any money. If you like playing it, you get into Magic and you play with me. And the deck is yours to keep. If not, you give it back and I get to give it to somebody else.
Hmm.
And I said,
Awesome.
okay, you know what? You're on.
So what was it that you liked about it?
Well, we played that first game, and it was the flyers. It was being able to generate these cheap flyers or these recursive creatures that I really enjoyed. At the time, he had things like Rock Egg in it that if it died, as it was a 0/2 defender for 2 and a white, if it died, I think it's 2 and a white. If it died, it created a bird.
Hmm.
And the deck that he originally made, and then he helped me shape this deck. The 2 cards that stood out to me were Spectral Procession, and he had a Lingering Souls in there.
Hmm.
And those 2 cards were the ones that stood out to me the most. I enjoyed Spectral Procession because you got 3 of those flying things, 3 whole bodies. I mean, young me was just
Hmm.
amazed. And then Lingering Souls was a card that you got to cast twice. And
Hmm.
that just felt so fun to me to be able to cast it once and then it's sitting there in your graveyard and I get to do it again if I want to. And those 2 cards were the start of this deck and where it came from and how he helped me shape it afterwards. Because it was at that point that I said, you know what, I think I want to take this deck and I want to build spirits out of it. And he said, okay, we can do that, and took me to the store, and that was when we started building this deck.
Awesome. What was it about the flying ability that captured your attention?
So he liked playing big green creatures, right? Big green
Hmm.
creatures with trample. And I would always be annoyed that he could hit me no matter what I used to block. What I liked about the Flyers was, well, you just can't block them.
Hmm.
And again, he's playing big green creatures. Very few green creatures had reach at the time. So I didn't even know reach was an ability.
Hmm.
So I'm playing against a green deck and I'm able to fly over these. It's like, yeah, sure, you have a 6/6, but I have 13 flyers. What you gonna do about it?
It is also you're flying and able to get inconsistent damage a lot faster than they can get the big things out.
Yep. And it let me race those big creatures a lot of the time, and I really enjoyed that.
So those are
And
some of
thought
the
it was really fun.
things.
And then, like I said, I would once we tweaked to the deck and I knew which way I wanted to go with it, sometimes my creatures would be able to even compare as we got up into the game because you have Drog Skull Captain, which is making them bigger and making them
Mm-hmm.
hexproof. But then you also run something like the enchantment Intangible Virtue for 1 and a white. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance. So if I start getting a couple of those down, it's all of a sudden every 1/1 becomes a 4/4 or a 3/3 or even just a 2/2. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you're making 2/2/2s for 3 mana, it's real nice to spend 3 mana, have 4 power on the field, or 3 mana and have 6 power on the field, or more, depending on how many of those buffs that we have out.
That, and because you're spreading it across multiple bodies, you're increasing the power that you put out exponentially, whereas they're only adding.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference between multiplying and adding.
Yeah, definitely.
Even though you can add a larger number than what the multiplication result is,
Mm-hmm.
multiplication is repeated addition, and so each time that you add like a +1/+1 to all your creatures, it's the equivalent of playing like a 6/6
Yep.
if you have 6 bodies.
Yeah, it that was honestly never even something that I thought about, but it always would come down to that. It's like, yeah, I have 4 3/3s, so I have 12 power in the air. You have an 8/8. Guess who wins?
Mm-hmm.
It's not the person with a single 8/8.
Now, did you find that you sometimes get into situations where your creatures are smaller than what they're producing and you have to do things like chump blocking?
Oh, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I still remember one game where I was playing this deck, and we were playing a game format that I don't know if they created it or if it was one that they heard, but it was called Star, where all five of
I've
us
heard
were
of
just
that.
playing a fun deck that we wanted around the kitchen table.
Mm-hmm.
And the person who was diagonally across from me. So if you don't know how Star works, you all sit in a star pattern, and you can only attack the people who are at your diagonals until you take care of one of those people, and then you can move either to the left or the right. You get to choose. Um, and so we were playing that format, and the opponent to the left of me, at my left diagonal, had I think it was called an Acroan Colossus. It
Mm-hmm.
was this massive 10/10 that had monstrosity for 10, and it was a 20/20 with trample coming at my face.
Yep.
And I did have a lot of spirits, but I only had 15 of them, and they were all still 1/1s.
Mm-hmm.
But they all went in front of that Acroan Colossus because I wanted to live.
Well, that is soaking up the damage. I was talking about more in terms of chump blocking, where your 1/1 blocks like a 7/7 because it doesn't have trample.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things where, because you're going wide, you have the ability to block a larger creature with a much smaller creature, which I didn't know that you could do for quite some time.
Really? Okay, yeah. That was definitely. Ah, man, you're just making me fall in love with this deck even more.
Yeah.
That was definitely always something that I did enjoy, because one of the other things that he would play is, I'm thinking, he played Eldrazi, so Annihilator, I'm making a bunch of tokens, I'm safe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that, and then there was also, sometimes, yeah, he would play some big green creatures that didn't have trample, and it's like, yeah, you know what, I have 4/1/1s, I can sacrifice one for now.
Mm-hmm. And then and then you start to learn things like racing, where, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I'm making more bodies each turn than I'm losing in chump blocking, and so I'm able to continue to attack with a good amount of them.
Right, yep.
There's a bit of risk associated, though, if he's able to give something trample.
Yep. Or if he ends up, for him, it was, does he hit his Acroan Memorial? Or not Acroan Memorial,
Akroma's,
Akroma's
yeah.
Memorial, and give all of his dudes haste.
Oh,
Because then
yeah.
I was screwed.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would assume he had more than 8 mana, I suppose. Because they would all. Otherwise, if they're already out, giving them haste doesn't matter.
True. Normally, he would have the deck that he built was, it used Elvish Piper a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be able to cast the big green spells for one green.
Ah, yep.
And then slam down the Memorial.
Nice.
And, attack out of nowhere with it.
Oh, lovely.
Mm-hmm.
I think I saw that recently on, or something like that anyways, recently on,
Oh, no, yeah?
I think they had Elvish Piper on in a Samet deck.
Oh, yeah.
And so Samet gave him haste, and Piper
Mm-hmm.
pooped him out.
Yep. Hyper, and I think it is. Oh, what is? There's a medallion that does the same thing, but it's an artifact.
Mm, Quicksilver. Um,
Yes, Quicksilver Amulet.
yeah, Quicksilver. Yeah. So I actually been building some Oathbreaker decks around high mana values recently. One of them was Erratic Explosion with the 2 mana Tibalt. So basically, I got 2 mana Tibalt, 3 mana Erratic Explosion, deal
Mm-hmm.
10 with like a Krog Colossus or something. It's just silly
That's
stuff like that.
fantastic.
Then 2 turns later, I do it again. So yeah, that's why some of those things are still fresh in my mind.
Oh yeah, it's amazing what aspects will stick out years later after we've played them. You know.
Hmm. So, are there either non-spirits or non-creature cards in the deck?
Oh yeah. So most of my creature based stuff is spirits. Like the key one is, we have Drug Skull Captain, and then the second key one is Twilight Drover. I don't think I've touched on him. He is a when. Sorry, I'm stammering there for a bit.
That's okay.
2 and a white for a 1/1 that says whenever a creature token leaves the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Twilight Drover, and then I can remove a +1/+1 counter and create 2 spirits for every counter I take off.
Hmm.
For 3 mana. So that was, he's a repeated engine in and of himself that creates extra tokens.
Yep.
But the non-spirit stuff that I tend to run in this deck are there's Doom Traveler, which is technically a spirit, but he
Spirits.
starts out as a human, and he's just a 1 mana 1/1 that does nothing but wants to die.
I can't take it anymore. I just want to die. We all want to die.
Because
Yep.
he was he was the one that I always he lived up to his name, because I send him down and his whole purpose was to block those big boys that were about to attack my face, because he would block them and then I'd get a flyer out of it, because when he dies I get to create a spirit token.
Hmm.
And then there are 2 more key ones that are non-spirit focused that make it into this deck. One is, we've already talked about it, Lingering Souls, or no, sorry, Intangible Virtue. And then, which is that enchantment that gives all tokens, doesn't matter what they are, whether they're spirit or
Yep.
beasts or elephants, they get +1/+1 and vigilance. And then the other one is probably one of my favorite removal spells in all of Magic, and that's Detention Sphere.
Oh, neat.
And that's,
Mhm.
huh?
Neat, because that's that's an awesome card that I remember really liking. So Detention Sphere is.
Detention Sphere is a 3-drop enchantment, 1 white blue, and then it says when it enters the battlefield, you may exile target non-land permanent not named Detention Sphere and all other permanents with the same name as that permanent. Then it has the caveat of when it leaves the battlefield, return those cards under their owner's control. But I loved this thing because it'd be very frequent where he would also maybe be generating beast tokens, and I'd be able to take them all out in one go, and then they would never come back because they're tokens. Or, this was the big one, he played Emrakul. This could hit Emrakul.
Nice. I remember O-Ring doing the job too.
Yep.
Now, the reason why that works is because
Emrakul has protection from instants. This is not an instant. Or hold on, no, wait. I gotta go back and actually read OG Emrakul. It's been a while since I've seen her.
it's protection from colored spells.
That's right, protection from colored spells. That's it. Okay. So yeah, she has protection from spells that are 1 or more colors. But the thing is that this, by the time it resolves, is no longer a spell, and its ability is what triggers and does the exile.
Yep.
So it's not the spell that does the exile. It's once this hits the battlefield, it has an ability for entering the battlefield, and that ability can still target Emrakul.
Yep. I always loved that. Or hated that because I used to play a polymorph in Emrakul deck. But I love cards like polymorph. But one of my memories with Detention Sphere was I was playing with what kind of deck was it? So it was an Enduring Ideal deck, and one of the cards one of the synergies I had was that I could. So there's a new Astral Slide and so I could cycle something blink a morphed creature and flip it up. And so I had in the sideboard of the deck, just to make sure that I could compete with blue white control decks. I had the mono red Achroma, which has protection from blue and white. I was trying to go
Right?
quickly in the second game of the finals of a tournament, and so I put it face down, and it wound up getting detention sphered.
Oh no.
So a creature that has protection from blue and white was somehow exiled by
A
detention
blue and
sphere.
white.
But what I
That's
wound up doing
fantastic.
was I had Beseiju to make sure that my Enduring Ideal was uncounterable, and then just found
Hmm.
an O-ring for their detention sphere
Oh,
and
nice.
won the game. But still, that was hilarious. I took a picture of it because I don't think that's ever gonna happen again.
No, that's a beautiful interaction there.
For him, yes.
Yeah. It's fun for us too because we get to talk about it now and kind of look back and enjoy the irony of that whole situation.
If I had one, I might not be talking about it.
Yeah. I hear that. I understand that.
So, was there was there anything about the aesthetic that drew you to it? Like, do you have any interest in ghosts or the stories behind those who depart and leave something behind on the earth?
Honestly, not too much. So I am spiritual. I am a Christian, and that makes me believe in the afterlife and things along those lines. Um, but it wasn't that aspect. What made me love the spirits and the specific ones that I chose was the story aspect because the two things that drew me into Magic. One was this deck that my friend built for me, which was just a blue white flyers deck that I evolved into a blue white flyers spirits deck.
Mm-hmm.
And the other aspect was the lore. I was a huge Vorthos nerd. Before I even read, or rather, before I even played the game, I would sit there while my friends played and just read the cards and read that flavor text. And the one that I loved the most, and I gotta remember what it was. I think it's Assassinate, which let me see if I can pull this up really quick because I want to. This was the flavor text for me that just oh made me love the story that they were telling. So let me go ahead and pull up Assassinate here and make sure
Okay.
maybe it wasn't Assassinate. Oh goodness, see this is where Assassin's Strike. That was it. Okay, so it's
Nice.
Assassin's Strike, and then Avenging Arrow is the other one that kind of were the two that I fell in love with as far as flavor went, and I really loved the story that these cards can tell. So, Assassin's Strike, if you look at the art, what you see is you see a Demir Rogue hiding behind a kind of what looks like just a wall of some sort, and you see a Selesnya missionary coming past. And the flavor text reads the card itself is 4, 2 black, destroy target creature, its controller discards card. The flavor text reads whenever Selesnya missionaries moved into the Shanav quarter, they faced scorn, ridicule, and ultimately martyrdom. So they were being killed by these Demir rogues. But what is amazing is that on Avenging Arrow, 2 in a white, you see a Demir rogue with a Selesnya arrow piercing through him. And it says, destroy target creature that dealt damage to you this turn. And the flavor text on that was forgive the theft, punish the deception.
Nice.
And seeing those two cards side to side, they're not massive, they're not super powerful cards, but as a Vorthos person, I fell in love with that. Just seeing that story play out across two images and the flavor text that tied in. And I loved looking down at these cards and seeing that story. Being able to just in the images and see, like Drog Captain, you feel just the passion that he had as a leader. And I mean, the flavor text on it is dead or alive, true leaders can inspire an entire army. Oh, it gets me every time. I love that. And being able to know the lore that was behind them and see that play out was kind of what led me to these as well.
So, what was it about the Drogskull captain um, that intrigued you?
So it was this little word called hexproof.
I meant in terms of the
The lore.
the text and the lore.
Well, I want to know more about this character because I love just looking at this pirate spirit dude with a huge army behind him. So if anybody who's listening, the image that you get on this, I recommend looking it up online because I'm not going to do it justice. But the image you get on this is this man who does look like a captain of a ship, full buckler and vest with red cape billowing behind him, two swords in each hand, and this beautiful captain's hat. And behind him is a wall of spirits that are charging forward. And that flavor, seeing that man just life or death able to lead an army is amazing. I thought that was so cool. And that was what made kind of him be what I loved the most about this. Um, it was just because there's kind of like a double entendre almost with it, you know, because dead or alive, true leaders can inspire an army. Now you see the literal here, where yes, this man is truly inspiring an army in the death. You know, he's dead and still leading them to battle. We have a kind of Lord of the Rings Aragon moment here.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of inversely, the double entendre is that while you are alive, you get to, you know, inspire people and with what you do, but those who truly inspire others live on through that.
Awesome.
And a true leader will inspire others and live on through them, through what he led and inspired them to be.
Awesome. It's wonderful how the kind of life lessons you can learn from these cards.
Oh, yeah.
So, how does the white undead aesthetic differ from like the black undead aesthetic?
Oh, immensely. So, white undead is there are two things that I mainly experience is that one, it's the other person returning as a ethereal version of themselves. So they were once physical and corporeal, and now they are spiritual and incorporeal. So there's that kind of version that you see mainly in white. However, black, what you see is you have the corporeal flesh that dies, and then it is that same corporeal flesh that is reanimated and brought back as it was, maybe just a little bit more zombie ish.
So, is there also sort of a difference in terms of what's binding them to this earth and what is bound to the earth?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I think a good example of that is you have Lingering Souls, which is just an MTG card that is just talking about how people who have a reason to stick around, their spirit will linger, versus a zombie who is being raised by, you know, Liliana over there stomping on a gravestone saying, hey, you mine now, let's go.
It's also a little bit in terms of how they died as well. That it's almost like, do you play D&D or no?
I have actually, yes.
Are you aware of like what gives the paladins their power?
It's not. I'm not super into it, so
Okay.
go ahead and refresh me.
Okay.
I'm going to pretend like I know what you're talking
That's
about.
okay. I have a paladin in a campaign. Your paladins have their power based on an oath that they have made to someone or something.
Hmm.
And their power comes from how well they're able to embody that oath and fulfill that oath.
Okay.
If they are unable to fulfill that oath, or if they are doing actions that go against whatever oath they made, then their powers don't work. If they are using their powers towards the fulfillment of their goal, then they are able to access depths of strength and power that they didn't know existed, and they're able to do things that could be seen as unnatural.
Okay.
So it's interesting how white seems to be more bound by a contract, or it seems to be more bound by an oath, an intrinsic oath,
Hmm.
and it's more of a choice rather than being bound by a contract which may or may not have been entered into willingly or knowingly.
Right. Yeah, and that's very true because all the spirits are either lingering due to their own emotion or something that they desire that holds them here, versus something that is external outside of themselves that is keeping them in this plane. Is what the zombies are.
Awesome. So you did mention that you're looking for that you look for Esper colored commanders coming out to try to unify this into a deck.
Oh, all the time.
What would your ideal Esper Spirits commander look like?
Honestly, my ideal Esper Spirits commander would essentially just be Drogskull Captain with black. And I actually had a friend of mine whip this up. Basically, let me see if I can pull it up. He made a fake card for me.
Awesome.
And yeah, and it was, where did it go? I gotta pull it up here. Come on. It is my name backwards, so it's just Nor instead of Ron.
Okay.
And it is Nor Black Mare Captain. And Nor the Black Mare Captain is 1 white, blue, black for a legendary creature, Spirit Pirate. And he's 2/2, flying, says other spirit creatures you control get +1/+1 and have hexproof. When a non-spirit creature you control dies, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token. And then sacrifice X spirits, choose a creature. That creature gets +1/+1 for each spirit sacrificed this way and has indestructible.
Awesome.
So
I like being
a
able
lot
to
of
add
text.
indestructible to it.
Hmm?
I like being able to add indestructible to it. I'm guessing is Selfless Spirit in the deck?
It would be, yes. I haven't built this deck
Okay.
yet, but I'm going to, and Selfless Spirit will definitely be in the deck.
Okay. If that is an Innistrad era spirit that seems like it fits thematically and would provide the indestructible you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
If you're talking about spirit pirates, we'll get back to what we were just talking about, but I just was thinking of something while you were talking. Have you thought of partner commanders?
You know, honestly, that is not something I've looked into as far as that goes. I've only looked at monocolors. I have not even considered partners.
So Ravos is one that might be good. Ravos with Ramirez, DPH, the Ghost of Ramirez DiPietro.
Mm-hmm.
Ravos is a human cleric with flying, and other creatures you control get +1/+1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you can return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So that is a way to recur your spirits. And he also will plus all your creatures, including your tokens. So that gets part of it.
But that is a spirit pirate, so she fits thematically.
Mm-hmm. She fits thematically, and Ravos fits mechanically.
Yeah.
So that is a possibility.
It is, and it's closer than anything I've seen, as far as in my opinion, as far as what fits. And since Ghost of Ramirez is from Commander Legends, you can get those fancy etched foils.
Yeah. Ravos is also etched. And
oh, is there an etched Ravos? Nice.
Yep, because I have a Ravos and Ishai deck, and both of them are etched. Because they reprinted all of the older partners with etched.
That's right, they did.
So idea.
Still have a. Go ahead.
So that's an idea.
That is an idea. I'm gonna take a note down. I'm gonna look into that.
Sweet. Okay.
Because yeah, I haven't considered partners at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that is an aspect that I should have been looking into, because if one commander can't do it, maybe two can.
Yeah, just in terms of different ways of creating the Esper colors.
Mm-hmm.
And even with my Ravos and Ishai deck, that was just me wanting to make Esper Group Hug. I didn't see an Esper Group Hug commander, so I'm like, you know what, Ishai's Group Hug? How do I add black?
That's fantastic.
And I realized Ravos can get Ishai back if it dies. That works.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow, I can't believe I've never even thought of partner commanders. You've just... it's so simple, but you've opened up a whole new world to me.
It's okay. A whole new world. Hey, they fly.
They do fly. I gotta check that out now. I very well might be building that. That might be my next deck.
That would be awesome. And so you are now on the skull symbol, and you can always, in deck discussions, start pitching ideas. And there are people who will be active at different times of day, and they can provide you some feedback.
Well, yeah, I'm glad to be a part of that. I can't wait to see what all happens with with this because I now have to look into who all I might want to have in this new commander deck. I can't believe I've never thought of partners.
It's okay.
I cannot believe I've never thought of partners.
It happens. Hey, if nothing else, something good came out of this, right?
Oh, I enjoyed it regardless. So something great came out of this entirely.
Awesome, thank you. All right, was there more that you wanted to talk about with your with the commander that you had your friend make?
Oh no, that was pretty much it. The whole point of that was I just liked the idea of being able to. So what spawned him was I loved Drogskull Captain, and I hated the fact that he couldn't protect himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to have something that wasn't overpowered, but could allow me to protect my Drogskull Captain, because that was the thing that I hated the most about this deck. Is that I get one captain down, and then he'd die, and then I get a second captain down, and then he'd die, and then if I was lucky enough to get two captains down, I was good.
Yep.
But I wanted a way to have captain protect himself.
Did you have issues with wrath effects, or was that something that didn't happen as much early on because you were playing against a mostly green player?
That wasn't anything that I had to deal with until I got my wife into Magic. But what I've loved about this deck is that even after a wrath, I can still rebuild rather quickly. So I'm casting one card and I'm getting 3 creatures out of it. They're casting one card, they're getting 1 creature, So I was kind of okay with wraths and wasn't too worried about them because, by the time you've gotten 2 creatures, I have 7 out again. And it wasn't an uncommon thing for a wrath to go off. I have 2 intangible virtues out on the field. I play a single spectral possession, and now I have 6 power in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Or 9 power in the air, rather.
Yeah, that's
so
9,
it's just like, okay, you're still dead next turn.
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking to myself the irony of a wife teaching you what wrath is. Anyways.
This was actually the deck that I used against her and taught her how to play MTG, and so this deck's been through a lot with me. That's why I haven't upgraded it much, because I kind of don't want to change the heart of it.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I've done here and there is maybe update the lands or add foil versions of the cards if they exist, or as they come to exist. But this deck was the first deck I ever built. Its first incarnation was awful.
Mm-hmm.
It was over 80 cards. And somehow still ran with only like 20 lands.
Oh, jeez.
Actually, yeah, it was over 75 cards and only 20 lands. I did not know how to build decks back then, but I loved every second of my 3 mana. Because in my mind, I was like, I just need 3 mana to play this deck. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't need a lot of lands. And if I manage to get to 6, well, then great. But I just need 3 mana. And then eventually, as I learned how to play Magic and understood why you only have 60 cards and what that means, and understanding, consistency and deck thinning and being able to do what you want to do, this became what it is now, where my friend helped me just find the right cards. And I still remember the nights where we just, all right, we're going to the game store because they're having a sale, 100 cards for $1. And it was always commons and uncommons.
Mm-hmm.
100 commons and uncommons for $1, and I'm going in and I'm looking for those Drogskull Captains, the Intangible Virtues, the Lingering Souls, and it took us a while to finally get me all of my play sets.
Mm-hmm.
But once we had them, I was ecstatic to be able to sleeve this girl up and just go at it every single time we got to play Magic and actually have a deck that I got to put together super cheaply. It didn't cost me much. Mm-hmm. Granted, now I've fallen into the pit of spending who knows how much on Magic.
Mm-hmm.
The fear has come true.
Yeah.
But this deck's been through a lot, and she's still in her original deck vault.
Awesome.
And I don't think I'll ever, even if I build the commander deck, this deck will still stand just because of what it means to me. Because it was the first deck my friend gave me and helped me build, the first deck I ever built. And it was also the deck I used to teach my wife how to play. And so there's a lot of heart and emotion behind this deck.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for sharing. So this has been
Game Grounds. Ron Sethman with the Game Grounds.
Awesome, and I am your consummate host, J-Ro, the Unsummoned Skull. You can find my content on Twitter at coach_J_RO, at Twitch on twitch.tv backslash unsummoned skull, and Discord community is the skull symbol. Where can we find your content?
So you can find me at twitch.tv/thegamegrounds. Just that whole thing, no spaces, or at Twitter at Twitter handle grounds game. No just grounds game, because the game grounds was already taken. And then I also have my own Discord, and it's the game grounds. I almost forgot my own server name. It's just the game grounds.
That's all right. Well, it's wonderful to have you on. Thank you very much. And
thank you for having me.
Absolutely, it's been an honor.